Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, everybody. My name is Bill Woodcock,
And I'm Steve Hunt.
and you are watching and/or listening to another episode of But Before We Go, the podcast by Gen X, about Gen X, for everyone. Steve, in our last episode, we talked about the change of seasons. We're now into the fall, into the autumn, whatever your term preference might be. And I want to kind of zoom in
Mhm.
on a fall tradition that you mentioned in the last episode,
Mhm.
because what also used to happen would be the reference books of fall, and they
Yeah.
were fun. And Steve, you mentioned the Old Farmer's Almanac. For the people who are not otherwise initiated into the ways of agriculture
Mhm.
in the US, describe what the Old Farmer's Almanac exactly is.
Well, the obviously, we're talking about, Gen X and when we were kids. So, we didn't get constant information on our, smartphones. Um, and, you could obviously watch the nightly news and your weather guys, and there were very famous, well-known weather characters. We could get into a whole episode about everybody from Barry Zavan, the weatherman on WJLA, to yes, baby, Barry, or Bob Ryan. But anyway, so the Farmers Almanac, which Bob Ryan would always reference on Channel 4, is a book that would come out that basically was a predictor based on whatever model existed at the time of what you could expect in the upcoming seasons. And the big thing was that everybody looked at was, what are they predicting for the winter? Is it going to be a cold winter than normal? Pretty much on point, or warmer? How much snow are you going to get? Things of that nature. So as a kid, you obviously wanted to hear it's going to snow like hell this winter, because that meant lots of school closings. But the Farmer's Almanac, and obviously its name came from the fact that it was a book that farmers would get to know what to do with their crops based on what the weather conditions were predicted to be. But that book carried on even after we moved from a more, agricultural society to a more industrial one, because again, it would give information as far as, what weather was going to be happening, storm systems, and all of that good stuff. So it was one of those things that always came out, and a lot of these reference books, I think, maybe I'm wrong, came out to coincide at the beginning of the school year, and I know you're going to talk about some of them as well. I think that might have had something to do with the timing, but I know the almanac was more about what was going to happen for the rest of the year going into the winter season.
All right. I don't know whether to handle this like the prosecuting attorney or like a fellow commentator. So let me handle it like a prosecuting attorney.
Go get it.
So, how did the Old Farmer's Almanac present the weather forecasts for the coming year within its pages?
If I remember correctly, I believe they would break it down by area or region.
So there
So,
would be a separate volume for each
yes,
separate region. And the regions were arbitrary. The
sure.
publishers decided what the regions were. Like there was a middle Atlantic region, a northeast region, etc.
Right, because you wanted to specifically know what your weather was going to look like. Now, if you just had some interest, maybe you're going to be going somewhere. I don't know why you would want to know what was going on the West Coast unless you plan on being out there for a while. But you're right. You typically wanted to know, okay, what's going on in the mid-Atlantic region, which, includes the great state of Maryland and Virginia and the District of Columbia, et cetera, et cetera. You want to know what was happening in your neck of the woods, basically. So yes, they would break it
Okay.
down that way.
And then when you would open up the pages, how did you see the pages? Was it listed by month, by day, by season? how did you glean the specific weather forecast data?
I don't remember it being broken down by day. They may did they? Because I remember a month and I remember a season, and then they would break it down by months within the season. I don't remember it
Steve,
going that far.
I need to start writing cards. Steve, you were supposed to take my cue. That's by the day. They did it
Okay,
by the day. It was by the month and it was by the day. Now I'll go into the other mode. It
go
was
for it.
by the month and the day, and it would list the high temperature, the low temperature, what the conditions were supposed to be: sunny, cloudy,
Mhm.
rainy, snowy, windy, partly cloudy, what have you, and the chance of precipitation. It was like today going to your phone and pulling up the 10-day projection on the Weather Channel, except it was for the whole year.
Hmm. Okay, carry on, sir.
So you said in the last episode that your father, I went back into prosecutor mode.
No,
You
no, no.
said back in the last episode that your father used this for the purposes of the crops that were in your garden.
Well, he didn't use the almanac per se. He just
Okay.
had a sense of, you know, having been around long enough of when first frost was probably going to hit. He did not drill it down to a science, but in his mind, the first frost, and for him, it was the first singular frost because if you didn't get stuff cut down before that hit, his theory, whether it was right or wrong, was it would hurt the plant. So not only did he want to beat the first consistent frost, he wanted to beat that first blast, which again, you sometimes could get that temperature drop in late September and then it would go back up, but it dropped long enough to do damage. So that's why September was his month because he figured something. Now, sometimes you wouldn't get one until mid October. That was typically the case. But for him, hey, I'm prepared.
And so the almanac was less a direct gospel, as it were, but more of a guide,
Yes.
a farming companion, if you will, or
Mhm.
gardening companion in this case.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. But the big thing again from the almanac is I think we kids were much more interested in it. Because I remember when it would come out, and again, Bob Ryan on the old Channel 4, he would refer to that when saying, okay, for those of you who want to know what's going to happen, this upcoming winter, according to the Farmer's Almanac, he would reference that book on air to let you know what was being predicted for the winter months. That was like a big thing that Bob Ryan would do.
Bob Ryan, otherwise known as the Willie Pop of U.S. television meteorologists.
Yeah, he was that was one of his things was he
He
would reference that book for the
he he
when we get into
he was
this time of year.
He was off on an extended vacation for 2 weeks. He was the former weatherman on the NBC's Today Show. He was off for 2 weeks and was replaced by WRC4's Willard Scott.
Mm,
And uh, Bob came back for a short while, but eventually they replaced him with Willard. And
yeah,
Willard was on there for what, 20 plus years. And
yeah,
Bob went to WRC4.
yep, yep, and was like I said one of the great legends of local area newscasting. I mean,
Wally
I
Kid.
put I put it right
So
there with George Michael and Warner Wolf before he went to New York, and like I said, Barry Zavan and some of the other ones, Max Robinson. I mean, we can go into the names of newscasters, but Bob Ryan is right there as far as one of those names.
so how accurate would you say the Farmer's Almanac would be?
I'll say as accurate as any other weather forecaster.
Well, give me a number. Don't give me this qualitative hooey. Give me a number.
Well, I would say if you want to go day by day, it was pretty good. I would say you could get into the 60 to 70 range as far as closeness to a daily forecast. When you talked about a seasonal forecast in composite, it was probably batting about 50.
In my research for this episode
Oh
this
boy.
week, I looked up data as to how accurate the Farmer's Almanac would be. And the numbers range. Whoa, where am I here? The numbers range anywhere from 50 to 85%. You can maybe able to guess who said 85%. Indeed, the publishers of the Farmer's Almanac
Yeah.
said that. But other studies have shown that it's accurate 50 to 80, I mean 50 to 70%. And I don't know what the definition of accurate is. I mean, is it on target about the conditions and the wet and the temperature? Is it like plus or minus 2 degrees, 10 degrees, whatever? But I will say this, even to say 50%
Hmm.
projecting a year out,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty good.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it certainly gives you something to work with. I mean, so you're saying there's a chance,
Exactly.
but no, it's
Exactly.
pretty good.
Only almanacs could have been used in other fields of endeavor
Yeah.
or
I
human
will say
experience.
I will say there was
Which,
more than one winter in which us kids were disappointed in the almanac because it predicted a lot more snow than we actually got.
the almanac would be full of shit in terms of predicting snow. I remember that.
Yeah.
Steve, moving on to like another key reference book that came out over the years.
Uh-huh.
Paul would also augur, there I go again with that word. I love that word.
Ah!
Bring about the publishing of the next year's edition of the Almanac of World Records,
Yep.
or as I would say for a few years, Guinness, because that's what I thought it was.
Ah!
The Guinness Book of World Records. And you would learn such things such as what was his name? Robert Waldrow was the tallest man who ever lived at
Yeah.
8 foot 11.1 inches. The two 1,100-pound twins riding their motorcycles down the street somewhere, I believe in Texas.
Yep.
You would learn, that you would learn about the Tibetan monk who grew his fingernails 6 feet
Yes.
long and they curled and looped the loop and did all sorts of
Yep.
weird patterns. You would learn about the people with the longest mustaches. You would learn about the largest litter of puppies ever recorded, the
Hmm.
highest temperature, the lowest temperature, the strongest winds. And then you would learn about like the simple shit, like the most number of dominoes knocked down, the
Hmm.
most number of coins balanced on one's elbow and
Yes.
caught. You would learn all sorts of sports world records, which
Yes.
at least were garnered into the actual world of real competition. Steve, did you ever have the Guinness Book of World Records or even the Guinness Book of World Records?
We
And did
did.
it excite and delight you?
Absolutely, because you want to see all the weird shit going on in the world. Like you said, the fingernail one always got me because it was always somebody and like you said, they it curls and loop the loops, and I'm like, how does this person even function without killing themselves?
Right. And who
Oh,
does that? Who's like, I know, I got a great plan. I'm going to grow my fingernails
yeah,
6 feet long.
yes,
And what do? You can't even use them as weapons. They're like,
because they're bent, yeah,
you have antlers from your hands.
yeah. So there was so no, I love that. And then I did like it when at one point, I don't know if you remember this, Bill, they actually came out with one specific to sports. And it was a
Yes.
yes, and so I enjoyed that one because being a sports guy, I wanted to see, and a lot of it was just like current records. Like I remember, um, at one point Ali, had the current record for most wins in a row by a heavyweight champ. He was like, before he lost to Frazier, I think it was like 29-0 or something. But and they would talk about like Tom Seaver when he struck out. I think it was like 19 at the time. So there were always those cool records out there. Then a lot of the Olympic stuff was in there. Like I remember, Mark Spitz, after he won his swimming records the next year, he was featured in there pretty prominently. So, oh yeah, that was you loved that book.
Greatest thing were the pictures.
Yes.
And eventually, as the Guinness Book of World Records matured over time, remember it was the McWhorter brothers who published it. Then the pictures turned from black and white to color, and there was no better picture than the person smoking like 130 cigarettes at one time.
Yeah.
Just like a mouth, just their mouth was just wide open and
Yep.
just cigarettes were stuffed in it. Just
Yeah.
and there's all the cigarettes sticking out, and somebody used like some sort of like a blowtorch to light them all. How terrible could it be to smoke 130 cigarettes at one time? World record or no?
Yeah. So it was definitely the freak show out there. Only surpassed by the release of the Ripley's Believe It or Not, which really took you into the freak show.
That also, I believe, was a book that came out every year. Very good call.
Yeah.
And they would always have some sort of weirdo, believe it or not, this thing happened. Here's a potato that was grown in Boise, Idaho that looks like the Last Supper. And then if you look, the resemblance is uncanny. And it was. And sometimes they would have like some interesting nature facts, like like the bird that can run the fastest
Yes.
on the water, and just like stuff like that. I mean, that was very much so. And for a while, I believe it or not, had these outlets called auditoriums starting ODD, and they would put some of this craziness on display. I would say they had the Elephant Man's skeleton on display somewhere.
Oh, before Michael Jackson got him?
Oh my God, that's right. I think that's who Michael Jackson may have bought it from. Yahoo! Charbon! The Elephant Man!
Oh boy.
We're gonna have a sleepover. A bunch of little kids. We are the world. We are the children.
Oh man.
Bet you didn't know I had a pitch perfect Michael Jackson imitation in the bullpen.
Oh, I think we all do somewhere. What I think is right next to our Elvis impersonation, right?
Oh, I'm not gonna go there. But dear Lord, yes, just the weirdness of these things, and that people would catalog them.
Oh, yeah.
And nowadays it seems like the level of what creates a world record is now getting to be a little bit more pithy. Like, like back in the 80s, or was it 90s, when they had Hands Across America.
Yes.
That had a world record for the longest chain of people, holding hands, blah, 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 however many that was.
Yeah.
Although it really wasn't, because I mean, I remember there being stretches where it was just like ribbon or cable,
Right.
and it wasn't really. Or like, the largest islands ever wrapped in Mylar were like those art installations by that guy Christo, who put like, pink Mylar around like some little chain of islands somewhere in the South Pacific and called it art.
Yeah.
I mean, and now they've gotten to like, most number of people applauding in unison at one
Yeah,
time. Those
yeah,
are getting, I mean, they're just becoming like things that, largest flash mob, it just becomes things that you do.
yeah, yeah. Seattle, they for the Seahawk games, loudest decibel because they get everybody to cheer, so it gets like to the sound of a jet airplane or something. Give me, Evil Knievel just jumped over 58 cars.
Oh
Okay,
my God,
give me that
yes.
shit.
Give me something that's actually tough. Give me something that's actually got some meat on it. I mean, for what it's worth, smoking 130 cigarettes is tough. Eating like two 96-ounce steaks in a sitting is tough. Standing with a group of people clapping, not tough.
Not tough. Yeah, and you're right. Those are tough things. Hell, I couldn't even do the what was the big one at Farrell's, the big ass steak that you ate and got a prize or something. I think it was Farrell's. I know there was the trough that you could eat, but then I thought there was a big ass steak that was like a 48-ounce porterhouse
I
or some
think it
shit.
was 48 ounces,
Yeah, and you got
3 pounds.
you got like they put you on the wall if you could take that thing out. Get back to me hand clappers when you knock that one down. All right.
How about this? How about each hand clapping effort has to have a 48-ounce steak before clapping their hands? Let's see how loogie they are then. Oh, and don't forget the sides. Don't forget to finish that baked potato and broccoli. So more useful information, Steve, would come in the form, and there were a few of these out, but there was the World Almanac and Book of Facts, there was the Information Please Almanac, and there were a couple. And these were actually more legitimate reference volumes. And
Mhm,
what would you learn in there? You would learn um, median and mean temperatures for all sorts of locations in the globe.
mhm,
You would have a very handy world atlas in the middle pages in color.
mhm,
You would have all sorts of information about agriculture, key imports and exports, and the ranges of the prices of various commodities during the 52 weeks just passed. You would have a section which was quite voluminous, probably about 60, 70 pages of this 700-page book,
mhm,
which would go into detail about every single sovereign nation on earth.
mhm.
Members of the United Nations, when did each one join? What committees are they on? All of that stuff.
Yeah.
US government, and of course, here was a big deal. There would also be another section of biographical information about each state and territory in the US. There would be historical data on the largest US cities, not just currently, but by each census since like 1890. There would be information on movies, not just who won like the latest Academy Award, but who won every
Mhm.
Academy Award. Like maybe 4 or 5 pages of the birthdays of your favorite stars and celebrities. I don't think Bob Ryan's ever made it in, but they
Yeah.
would have both the birth dates of your favorite celebrities, and then they would have the birth dates and death dates of deceased celebrities,
Mhm.
information on all of the presidents, on all of the vice presidents
Right.
of the US. And then, Steve, I know your sports section is near and dear to your heart. All sorts of information on the seasons just passed
Mhm.
in the Major League Baseball, National Football League, National Hockey League, uh, National Basketball Association, when they existed, the American Basketball Association, the World Hockey Association, World Team Tennis,
Yep.
professional golf, professional tennis, bowling. You had addresses to write to all the teams, which is very cool. And I would want to write to my favorite baseball players asking for an autograph. All of that stuff.
Mhm.
This shit was invaluable. It was
Absolutely.
Google before Google.
Well, and the thing was, Bill, if you're of our age, if anybody our age wrote a research paper and you needed to have your section of references, guess where those references came from? The books you mentioned, plus the Encyclopedia Britannica. That was it. Your references, because I know we did not do the almanac at home. We did do the Guinness at home. We talked about that book. We may have done one or two Ripley's at home because me and my brothers we wanted to see that shit. But those other ones, World Almanac and some of the other ones, they were in the library. And so if you were doing a research project, you probably hit one or more of those books and you had references to one or more of those books as part of your research. I don't know about you, but
And
I certainly did.
yeah, it's me too. Me too. And also the coolest thing about like all of these books that we're mentioning, with the possible exception of Believe It or Not, you can go into your favorite local bookstore today and get the current versions
Huh.
and get the new ones when they come out. They still make a World Almanac. They still make the Guinness Book of World Records. Of course, they still publish the old Farmer's Almanac. And I don't know, but there's nothing quite like looking at all that stuff on paper and all that stuff presented in an order so that, like, yeah, sure, let me read about Barbados. I don't know
Mhm.
anything. It was better than Google because with Google, you have a curiosity and it's like, oh, I'll Google all about that. Oh, no, you turn to the section on, you know, which textiles are produced in the highest quantity in terms of metric tons in the world and
Mhm.
broken down by continent. You can find that mess out. And then you're also like, well, wait a minute. Well, what about oats? That's in there. What about sugar? That's in
Mhm.
there. So lots of useless information, but also like lots of information you wouldn't find had you not cracked open the book and exercise your curiosity.
Absolutely, absolutely, and again, lots of useful stuff for school because most of your subjects that involve research papers, that was your go-to. You went there to get that information because, like you said, there was no Google, so you went to the library. You got library time to do some research, and they would keep several copies of those books. So obviously, you would have one kid with the book, and everybody else is waiting in line. And the big thing was they would you find little marks and dog ears from previous years, which you weren't supposed to do, but you did it anyway because you checked out the book and you would, you know, butcher it a little bit and
Right.
hope you didn't get caught turning it back in.
Steve, I will end with my favorite piece of information that I would always look back on from in every year's Guinness Book of World Records without fail. Don't ask me why this was it, but it was it. The largest fish ever caught,
Mm,
which for many years was a 2,066 pound, I want to say a great white shark.
mm,
Many years it was the largest.
hmm
And then that was supplanted eventually by a whale that was over 2,100 pounds. I'm not sure why, but in general, I was obsessed with large things.
hmm
The largest pumpkin. We talked about pumpkins in the last episode. The largest pumpkin grown, the largest tomato grown. But for some reason, that largest fish caught, always I needed to look up that shit.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, stuff that made you go, "Holy crap! I can't believe this." I can't believe this. I mean, to this day, I know the exact height within a few, a foot or two of Mount Everest. Why? Because I saw it in Guinness. It's 29,000, I think, and 29,035 feet. But
Right.
I probably got it from Guinness.
And it never changed
Yeah,
because it's a freaking mountain. But
Exactly.
you went every year to go to that list. Why? I don't know. Did they discover a new mountain that
Yeah.
somehow was taller? No.
Nope,
Oh,
still
I
there.
wonder if there will ever be a mountain that'll break 30,000 feet. No,
Oh,
because that's not just not going to happen. The Earth's geologic plates are, thank God, very much fused. There's going to be no more continent creation for some time.
oh boy. Absolutely. So yeah. So hopefully everybody, I hope you all appreciated us totally geeking out on this stuff. But if you were there, you get it. If you weren't there, hopefully you can appreciate
If
this
you
work
weren't there,
what we
go to
did.
your Barnes. Yeah, if you weren't there, go to your damn Barnes and Noble and buy the books.
Yeah,
And
you would be amazed at what you will find, and you will get it in a totally different way than your smartphone.
all right, Steve. Next week we go into spooky season. When we talk about Halloween costumes and the people who worn them. Not just ours, but others.
Absolutely.
That's why the orange shirt, because we're getting spooky. No, it isn't. Anyway, everybody, for Steve, I'm Bill. You have been watching and or listening to another episode of But Before We Go, have a wonderful day and week. Bye now.